హాయ్ హలో నమస్తే సన్బోనాని. మై నేమ్ ఈజ్ ఐశ్వర్య అండ్ వెల్కమ్ టు మై ఛానల్ సౌత్ ఆఫ్రికాలో తెలుగు అమ్మాయి. సో ఈరోజు మేము ఎక్కడికి వచ్చామని చెప్పేది ముందు మీరు చూస్తున్నారు కదా, గాంధీ గారి పక్కన ఉన్నాను నేను. ఏంటి అమ్మాయి గాంధీ గారి పక్కన ఉంది అనుకుంటున్నారా? మేము ఇప్పుడు వచ్చిన ప్లేస్ వచ్చేసి కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ హిల్ అనమాట అండి. సో ఇక్కడ ఏంటంటే గాంధీ గారిని ప్రిజెంట్ చేసిన ప్లేస్ అనమాట. ఇది గాంధీ గారిని జైల్లో పెట్టారు కదా సౌత్ ఆఫ్రికాలో. సో మేము ఆ ప్లేస్కి వచ్చాము ఇప్పుడు. ఈ ప్లేస్ వచ్చేసి జోహన్నెస్బర్గ్లో ఉంది. జోహన్నెస్బర్గ్లో కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ హిల్ అనమాట. సో ఇక్కడ గాంధీ గారు ఎలాంటి గదిలో ఉన్నారు, ఏం తిన్నారు, ఎలాంటి బట్టలు వేసుకున్నారు, ఇంకా ఎలాంటి శిక్షలు అనుభవించారు, ఇలాంటివన్నీ కూడా ఈ మ్యూజియంలో కళ్ళకు కట్టినట్టుగా చూపిస్తున్నారండి. ఒక గాంధీ గారే కాదు, ఇక్కడ మండేలాని కూడా ఇక్కడే ప్రిజెంట్ చేశారంట. సో ఇక్కడ జైలు ఎలా ఉంటుంది, ఖైదీలందరూ ఎలాంటి జీవితం గడుపుతారు, ఇలాంటివన్నీ కూడా ఈ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ హిల్లో మనం చూడొచ్చు అనమాట. ఒకప్పుడు ప్రిజన్ని ఇప్పుడు మ్యూజియం కింద కన్వర్ట్ చేశారు. సో అందరూ చూడడానికి వీలుగా మ్యూజియం కింద కన్వర్ట్ చేశారనమాట. అంటే జైల్స్ ఎలా ఉంటాయి, ఎలాంటి ఫుడ్ తింటారు, ఎక్కడ స్నానాలు చేస్తారు, ఇంకా ఇలాంటి అన్ని థింగ్స్ కూడా నేను ఈరోజు వీడియోలో నేను మీకు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తాను. సో నాతో పాటు మీరు కూడా కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ హిల్ ఎలా ఉంటుంది అనేది వీడియోలో చూసేయండి. లెట్స్ గెట్ ఇన్ టు ద వీడియో. సో ఇక్కడ ఎంట్రీ టికెట్ ప్రైస్ వచ్చేసి 80 rands per person అండి. ఇంకా చిన్నపిల్లల్ని ఇక్కడ స్కూల్స్ నుంచి టూర్స్కి కూడా తీసుకొస్తారండి వీళ్ళకి చూపించడం కోసం. అండ్ ఇంకా టైమింగ్స్ వచ్చేసి మార్నింగ్ 9 నుంచి 5 వరకు ఉంటుందండి. వీక్ డేస్ అండ్ వీకెండ్స్లో కూడా ఓపెన్ ఉంటుంది.
Okay. So you understand me. Okay, so welcome to Constitution Hill. My name is Pearl Nyeni. I'll be your guide for today. All right, so due to COVID-19 regulations, we just ask that you remain with your mask on, sanitize there and there, and we'll keep that a bit of social distancing as well. All right, so welcome to our site. So this site is a National Heritage Site. It was a prison back in the days. So there was a time when Johannesburg had a bit of like criminals every now and then because the gold was discovered in Johannesburg. So everybody just wanted to come and explore, etc. So Paul Kruger, 1893, decided to open a prison So it's the other side, the old fort prison. All right, so he opened up the prison to maintain the law and order. So, however, there was then the Anglo-Boer War. So the Anglo-Boer War, British foreigners, they tried to come to South Africa to overthrow the government. The government at that time was the Boer government. So Boers are descendants of the Dutch. So they tried to overthrow the Boer government. So the war happened between 1899 to about 1902, called the Anglo-Boer War. All right. So the Boers then had to build a fort. So the other side, that was the main prison. They fortified the place so to protect it and to protect themselves as well during the war. All right. So then they lost the war, the Boers. They surrendered everything to the British. The British took over around 1902 or so, 1900s rather. All right. They took over the fort and the entire space, and they used it to humiliate the Boers as well. And then around after 1902 or so, after the war, the British left. They fled. They didn't see any need for the use anymore of the Transvaal area, so they left, and the Boers became in power again. The Boer government then opened the place as a prison again. All right, so it became a prison, became a military fort, and then a prison again. However, so now they had to separate, right? So the other side, the old fort prison, was then for white male prisoners only, the white men. This one over here was called Number 4 Prison. It was built between 1902 and 1904 for the black male prisoners. So with the black, non-whites, Indians as well were imprisoned here, Chinese, the Asians, and the coloreds. Colored is a term for mixed race. Yes, so the men were here. All right. And then in 1913, the women's prison was then opened. Built 1930, officially opened 1914, the women's prison. All right. 1909, 1910, around the women's prison. All right. And then the site closed down 1983. And then 2004 opened up as a prison, as a museum rather. All right. So it closed 1983. It was left abandoned for a couple of years. And then 2004 opened as a heritage site. Okay. The highest court in South Africa, the Constitutional Court, was opened around the same time as well. We'll have a look at the court as well. Okay. So I'll show you this section, Number 4 Prison, and the Constitutional Court. Okay. So about this side, this section, Number 4 Prison, it was built to accommodate about 979 prisoners, but because of overcrowding, it ended up with about 2,000 prisoners in this space over here. So it's quite a small space for 2,000 prisoners, so it is completely overcrowded. All right. And then the cells, they were designed to hold 30 prisoners, but ended up with 60, so double the amount. Again, very overcrowded. Whereas in the white prisoners in the old fort were usually kept in smaller cells on their own, because the numbers in the white section was very small compared to this section. All right, so this prison, especially this section, criminals, politicians, people that were arrested for not carrying the passbooks, and all the other offenses, I'll go into detail inside. Okay, in the white section, the prisoners mostly there were just criminals and politicians. But this side had different prisoners, all right. Okay, so, and again, in the white section were like criminals and politicians, and in the black section, it was more of people that were incarcerated for not carrying passports, etc. Because many of the laws were put in place for blacks, especially. Yeah. Okay, so this is the cell. This is the cell over here. It had the 60 prisoners, and they slept a bit separately. It depended on your status So in the prison, I mentioned that there were criminals. So the criminals were the ones that were part of gangs. So the gangs were very dominant. They originate from here, actually, in South Africa. They called the numbers gangs. So they started in here, and then they, went outside as well. And they're very big, even till today, very dangerous gangs. So amongst the gangs, there would be those leaders, the gang leaders. They slept right over there at the front. So the gang leaders would have their own space. They would steal blankets from the other prisoners to make themselves very comfortable. All right. So they would make a bit of like a bed for themselves. Excuse me, right? So those were the other prisoners that didn't have maybe things to give the bosses to get a better life in the cell. So the overcrowded area was over here. Okay. That was the bedding. So the white prisoners would receive all of those, and the black non-white prisoners, so blacks, Indians, colors, Asians, would only get 2 sleeping mats. And so over here, we have an exhibition. So this one, we asked, who is a criminal? So those are the faces of some of the men that were imprisoned in here, number 4 prison. However, out of 10, 2 were real criminals, actual criminals. 2 out of 10. And then the rest would be politicians and ordinary citizens that were criminalized by the apartheid government. Okay. So there were some of the laws, we have them over here. There was a Blacks Act. So this Blacks Act said that permits the arrest of any black person over the age of 16 who was not carrying the passport. Okay, so if you were black, you did not have your passport, walking around Johannesburg, you would get arrested. There was this one, Transvaal Asiatic Law Amendment Act, forced Indians and Chinese males, only the boys, over the age of 8 to register their presence in the Transvaal, so Johannesburg area, and to also carry the passes as well. All right. But this law didn't go up for long because Mahatma Gandhi, especially him,
Yes.
he fought against that specific law. He refused to carry his passport. He led protests fighting for the rights, civil rights for the Indians. All right. So he came to South Africa. He became a lawyer as well. His chamber was in Johannesburg. And so that's where he started his political career as well in South Africa. So he was imprisoned inside here about 4 times, in and out of prison, between 1908 to about 1913. 1914, he went back to India. Alright. And eating. So the prisoners would take their food over here. Okay, so this is where they collected their food. Here's the daily diet that shows us what the prisoners would get to eat. Okay, so it was different food for the different races. For example, for bread, white prisoners would get white bread, coloreds and Asians, brown bread, and the Africans, no bread at all. All right, so even things like sugar, Africans would get the least quantity, as well as, for example, vegetables. Many of the vegetables were given to the white prisoners and the rest wouldn't get so much. Okay. And then there's that Zulu word after sugar. It is puzamandla. So that is a Zulu word that means an instant porridge. That was a porridge, like a porridge we have for breakfast. It was only given to the Africans, the black prisoners, to give them energy because they needed that energy to work. Because the government used prisoners, black prisoners, to go out and go to farms, to go to mines, to work, construction work, yeah. So they gave them that puzamandla to give them a bit of that energy. All right. The plates were hardly washed in the prison, so we see this plate not so clean, quite dirty, so they would then dish up on such dirty plates as well. Representing a bit of the portion of food they would receive. And the Christmas treats. So white prisoners, pudding or cake for Christmas. Non-white prisoners, coffee or tea for Christmas.
Oh.
Okay. The prisoners would eat their food. So they would sit down over here, have their food. And the other side, those were their toilets. So they were called the long drop toilets. So as they were seated over here, it's open and exposed at the bottom, and the smell as well was horrible. So that was also deliberately made for them to lose their appetites, to starve themselves to death. That's why they were told to eat in front of the long job toilets. And the prison was a health hazard. So over many years, there were outbreaks of diseases. So diseases like typhoid, enteric fever, diarrhea, cholera, because the place wasn't a clean place. It was, quite filthy. Everything from the mats to the blankets to the food to the utensils to the clothes, it was just dirty. So they would fall sick because of such thing. So many.
సో ఇక్కడ తను ఏం చెప్తుందంటే అండి, ఖైదీలందరూ కూడా ఈ షెడ్ కిందే కూర్చుని భోజనాలు చేసేవాళ్ళంటండి. వాళ్ళు భోజనం చేసేటప్పుడు ఇక్కడ ఎదురుగా మనకి టాయిలెట్స్ కనిపిస్తున్నాయి కదా, అక్కడి నుంచి వచ్చే స్మెల్, అక్కడి నుంచి లీక్ అయ్యే వాటరు ఇవంతా ఉండడం వల్ల వాళ్ళకి తినడానికి కూడా సరిగ్గా ఉండేది కాదనమాట. అంతేకాదండి, ఇక్కడ జైల్లో చాలా డిసీజులు కూడా వచ్చేవంటండి. ఎందుకంటే నీట్గా మెయింటైన్ చేయకపోవడం వల్ల చాలా డిసీజులు వచ్చేవంట, కలరా, టైఫాయిడ్ ఇలాంటివన్నీ.
Created just to be able to communicate. So this trouser, it meant, so take off your trouser, strip naked. So this was done after the prisoners that had to work, the black prisoners. So coming back from work in the prison, they searched them to see if they did not have anything that they hide or hidden inside of them. Okay, so they did this trouser practice. One by one, strip naked, jump up and down with their hands and their legs open. They had to turn around, do like a clicking sound. They had to do that with their tongue. Bend over for the warder, the guard. So they call them warders, the guards. To search the prisoner, so searching them internally, shoving up a baton up their anus to see if they did not have anything hidden inside of them. Okay, this was so extreme, most humiliating thing that the prisoners had to do. Okay, and the pictures that we see, they were taken 1954, and this was where they would shower. The showering was done here. It was open like this, so whether it was cold or hot or whatever, they had to shower in the open outside. 8 shower heads over there. That's what they would, the shower heads would then supply the water. And then, as I mentioned, 30 minutes once a week. All right. And then with the gang bosses, the leaders, sometimes they take up the entire space just to shower for themselves, the gang leaders, and then leaving everybody else without any shower for weeks. So also the gang leaders treated the prisoners very harshly as well. So everyone had to shower the same time, and it was impossible. Those were the other toilets.
ఇక్కడ వారానికి 30 నిమిషాలు మాత్రమే టైం ఇస్తారంటండి స్నానం చేయడానికి. అది కూడా పెద్ద పెద్ద రౌడీ షీటర్స్ వాళ్ళు ఉంటారు కదా, వాళ్ళే చేసేవాళ్ళు అంటండి, మిగతా వాళ్ళని చేయనిచ్చేవాళ్ళు కాదంట. తను అదే ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తుంది. ఇక్కడ చూసారు కదా బాత్రూమ్స్ కూడా ఎలా ఉన్నాయో, అన్నీ ఓపెన్ ఉన్నాయి.
Again, those long drop toilets. And the area over here was used for exercising, for a bit of a break outside from the cells. They would be over here. And those are the cells with the white doors all around us. So in the dark, you don't have anything to do, nothing to read, just you and the walls.
Oh.
For 30 days, sometimes going for more than 30 days. Right. shaving was punishment. If a prisoner maybe refused to shave their hair, especially with the prisoners over here, black prisoners were told to shave. They were given razors. So if they resisted and did not shave, put inside isolation, okay? Or the politicians, they put them in isolation to keep them away because they felt that the politicians were dangerous. So to keep them away, they put them in isolation, okay? 1, 1, 1, you get the buckets, 2 buckets. It had water, 1 bucket. The other bucket for toilet. All right.
Oh.
The sleeping mat and the blanket, so sleeping on the floor. And the lights were controlled by the warders, the guards. So sometimes they left the lights on and they left. So just so that the prisoner wouldn't be able to sleep much or just can't tell if it's day or if it's night because the lights would be on throughout. Okay. And then for eating, they did not get much food, well, any food. They only gave them rice water. So when you cook the rice, the starchy water that you remove here, only rice water here. Okay. The cell that has that gate over there, that was cell number 22, which was very brutal. So further punishment was done there. So if it was politicians, for example, they always wanted information from politicians. So they put them in there. To get that information, they would torture them, spray them with water, beat them up, etc. And then take them to, there was a police station in Johannesburg called John Foster Square. That's where the further interrogation would happen. That's where also they humiliated most of the politicians. And then, many have passed away. Many prisoners would not make it inside that one because sometimes they beat them up and, splash them with water and leave the door open. So in winter, if they're freezing cold, then you would, you wouldn't make it, or have pneumonia and so on, So with the normal prisoners, if they felt that the prisoner was starting to maybe lose their minds, go insane, they put them in there, torture them, which made them even worse, And then there's a cell, this one, cell number 13, lucky, it was the lucky cell. So once the prisoner was in this one, and they open this over here, and the gate opened like that, so the prisoner in this cell would get to see other prisoners, would get to see at least something happening here, instead of the other cells with just the walls. So at least from here, they saw a bit of movement. That's why it was the lucky one, the lucky cell. Okay, so these were isolation cells.
సో ఇక్కడ ఈ సెల్స్ వచ్చేసి ఐసోలేషన్ సెల్స్ అంటండి. అంటే రాజకీయ నాయకులు ఇంకా కొంతమంది మాట వినని వాళ్ళు ఉంటారు కదా, అలాంటి వాళ్ళ కోసం ఈ సెల్స్ అంటండి. ఇది చూసారు కదా అసలు ఎలా ఉన్నాయో. ఒకటే చిన్న ప్లేస్ ఉంది. ఇక్కడ 2 బకెట్స్ ఇస్తారంట. ఒక బకెట్లో వాటర్ అండ్ ఇంకొక బకెట్లో టాయిలెట్ కోసం. సో ఎవరినైనా పెట్టాలి అని అనుకుంటే రాజకీయ నాయకులు ఇలాంటి వాళ్ళని ఇలాంటి సెల్స్లో పెట్టేవాళ్ళు అంటండి. ఇక్కడ చూసారు కదా, అక్కడ చిన్నది ఉంది, అది ఓపెన్ చేస్తే బయట అనేది కనబడుతుందంట. ఓన్లీ ఈ ఒక్క సెల్కి మాత్రమే, వేరే దానికి ఏమీ ఆపర్చునిటీ లేదండి, ఎందుకంటే ఆపోజిట్లో గోడ ఉంది. సో ఏం కనిపించవు అన్నమాట. ఇప్పుడు మీరు వాయిస్ విన్నారు కదండి, అది గాంధీ గారి వాయిస్ అంటండి. అప్పుడు రికార్డ్ చేసినది వీళ్ళు మొత్తం డే అంతా ప్లే చేస్తున్నారనమాట, గాంధీ గారి వాయిస్. ఇక్కడ గాంధీ గారి ఫోటో చూసారు కదా, గాంధీ గారు ఎలా ఉన్నారో చూసారు కదా ఫోటోలో. సో ఇది గాంధీ గారు ఉన్న సెల్ అంటండి. మొత్తం గాంధీ గారిని 4 సార్లు జైల్లో పెట్టారంటండి. అది కూడా చెప్పింది కదా ఇందాక తను, పాస్పోర్ట్ క్యారీ చేయనందుకు ఇలా చిన్న చిన్న వాటికనమాట. సో అక్కడి నుంచి గాంధీ గారు రెవల్యూషన్ అనేది స్టార్ట్ చేశారంట. ఇక్కడ ఆయన యూజ్ చేసిన టైప్ రైటరు, ఇంకా చాలా పుస్తకాలు, ఆయన వేసుకున్న బట్టలు, ఇంకా ఇక్కడ గాంధీ గారి గురించి మొత్తం ఆయన జీవిత చరిత్ర అంతా కూడా మనకి ఫొటోస్ రూపంలో పెట్టారండి. చాలా బాగుంది. అసలు సౌత్ ఆఫ్రికాలో గాంధీ గారి గురించి ఇంత బాగా చూపించారు. నాకైతే చాలా బాగా నచ్చింది ఈ ప్లేస్.
Quick to lose our temper if we do not get the food we're used to. A great many Indians have been going to jail at my word. What a sin I would be if I had been given wrong advice. Am I the cause of all the suffering on the part of Indians? I consider the matter afresh, with God as witness.
ఇక్కడ వీకెండ్లో ఖైదీలకి ఒక కాంపిటీషన్ పెట్టేవాళ్ళంటండి. అదేంటంటే ఇక్కడ చూస్తున్నారు కదా, బెడ్షీట్స్తో ఏదో ఒక ఆర్ట్ చేయాలన్నమాట అండి. ఇవన్నీ అలా చేసినవేనంటండి. బెడ్షీట్స్తో ఆర్ట్ చేసినప్పుడు అందులో విన్ అయిన వాళ్ళకి ఒక బ్రెడ్ కానీ ఇంకా ఏమైనా ఫుడ్ ఐటమ్ ఇచ్చేవాళ్ళంటండి. సో దానికోసం ఖైదీలందరూ కూడా బెడ్షీట్స్ అన్నీ తీసుకొని వచ్చి ఇలా ఆర్ట్స్ కింద ప్రిపేర్ చేసేవాళ్ళంటండి. సో మీరు ఇప్పుడు చూస్తున్న ప్లేస్ వచ్చేసి ఉమెన్స్ జైల్ అంటండి. ఇది వరకు ఉమెన్స్ జైల్ లాగా యూజ్ చేశారంట, కానీ ఇప్పుడైతే కంప్లీట్గా రీమోడల్ చేసేసారండి. పాతవేమీ కనిపించట్లేదు మీకు ఇక్కడ. ఇంతకుముందు మీరు చూసారు కదా, అదంతా మెన్స్ జైల్ అంట. సో ఇది చూసారు కదా, మనకి పాతవేమి కనిపించవు, ఇక్కడ అంతా రీమోడల్ చేసేసారు. సో కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ హిల్ వీడియో ఎలా అనిపించిందండి? మీ అందరికీ నచ్చిందని అనుకుంటున్నాను. సౌత్ ఆఫ్రికాలో ఉన్న తెలుగు వాళ్ళు తప్పకుండా విజిట్ చేయండి, ఎందుకంటే ఇది ఒక హిస్టారికల్ ప్లేస్ కదా. గాంధీజీ గారు ఇక్కడ జైల్లో ఉన్నారు అనేది ఆ ఆనవాళ్ళన్నీ కూడా మనకి కనిపిస్తూ ఉంటాయి అన్నమాట. సో ఈ వీడియో మీకు నచ్చిందని అనుకుంటున్నాను. మీరు కనుక ఫస్ట్ టైం నా వీడియోస్ చూస్తున్నట్లయితే తప్పకుండా సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేసుకోండి. అండ్ ఈ వీడియో కనుక మీకు నచ్చినట్లయితే ప్లీజ్ లైక్, కామెంట్, షేర్ అండ్ డూ సబ్స్క్రైబ్ టు మై ఛానల్ సౌత్ ఆఫ్రికాలో తెలుగు అమ్మాయి. థ్యాంక్ యూ ఫర్ వాచింగ్. డోంట్ ఫర్గెట్ టు యాక్టివేట్ బెల్ ఐకాన్.